manage their money. Let's break down this powerful financial framework that provides real clarity. It begins by strategically managing your overall income. What's known as the 25, 15, 50, 10 rule. This involves directing 25% of your income towards financial growth, 15% towards building your stability, like an emergency fund, dedicating 50% to cover essential living costs, and allowing 10% for personal rewards and entertainment, enjoyment, life, you know? Cheers for supporting the show, folks. Thanks for the donation. Welcome to it. Then, to make that growth portion truly effective, this strategy extends to a diversified three-part investment portfolio, often exemplified by an allocation of around 60% to broad domestic stocks, think an S&P 500 index, 30% to international stock funds for global exposure, so again, think indexes, foreign ones, perhaps Hong Kong and UK, and 10% to bonds for stabilizing. It's a stabilizing element, bonds. We spoke about bonds in my show last week, so be sure to click the links in the description here to last week's video and you'll see all about bonds and money and understand how money works, which is pretty cool. Now, why lay out these specific numbers, these frameworks, right at the top of this show? Because understanding how to allocate resources like this isn't just about budgeting. It's about fundamentally shaping your power to engage with the world. It's about defining your wealth. It isn't about ownership. There's a poll in the chat. Take part in the poll in the chat. It asks, do you own your car or do you lease it? It feels like owning it when you lease it. So you might say, that's my car. But do you own your car? Do you lease it? Answer the poll. We'll get a good number on that and report back with the results. It used to be about ownership, though. Mercantile Europeans went on a journey of conquest and colonialism, evolved into an independence war after colonizing the north of America. These Europeans evolved into this independence war, which then evolved into a civil war among each other, which then evolved into a civil rights movement. And all the while through all of that, they maintained mercantile attitudes that it was all about what you owned. The life of a slave at the time wasn't a very wealthy one. They owned nothing. Even their own self was owned by somebody else. The conquest of the Americas by Europeans involved widespread genocide. They killed off a native indigenous people who were often derided for their ideas that wealth wasn't in ownership, so much so that they didn't really even understand the wars that they were being wiped out in over ownership of land. It's not just the Native Americans. The Brits took out their rulers and drew straight lines right through the Middle East, across to India and Iran, making country borders that determined who owned what and where. Talking about rulers, the Pope, who was a ruler at the time, took out his quill and divided up the ownership and title of the southern continent of the Americas between Spain and Portugal, as was his power at the time, and as was the view then of wealth, i.e. ownership. Modern Americans, modern Europeans, Brits, whatever, are far less concerned with ownership in many ways, in the small things. We have records that became MP3s, that became streaming services like Spotify, where the experience is rented through subscription. Or Netflix. We have houses owned by the banks, in truth, who provide the mortgage that pays for the house. You effectively subscribe to the bank with monthly payments to have access to your own home. Modern living, in so many ways, is a subscription service. The modern life is about access, not ownership. Perhaps we are now finally understanding what the Native Americans were putting in their peace pipes so many centuries later, that wealth isn't what you own, it's what you can access. Like the lost wealth of nomadic Arabic tribes who lost their identity through an imposition of ownership that didn't understand what their wealth truly was. Credit, debit, rent, so-called living hand to mouth due to car payments and medical insurance. What is it really? What is that? What is that? I'll tell you what it is. It's called living life now. Those three things, they're also one thing. They're living life now. Wealth isn't what you put into your pockets and take to heaven, for not a clod of sod will pass through the pearly gates. And as Carnegie said, he who dies rich dies disgraced. Wealth, that's the topic of today's show. And understanding the splitting up of your allocation of capital into different brackets of percentage groups helps you live like the 1% do, who understand that wealth is about access and allocating your capital towards areas that will give you greater access in the regions where you have less access, and leaning into those areas of your life where you have access to things which give you wealth in your life but don't cost you anything, is exactly how the 1% billionaires live. You might disdain the park outside your house, which is free to you, and think it doesn't increase the wealth in your life. But let me just ask you, do you think that Sam Altman, Elon Musk, and the rest of the gang who are billionaires and accompanied Donald Trump to Saudi Arabia and Qatar paid for their own airline tickets? No, they didn't. And are they incredibly wealthy? Yes, they are. You can get so wealthy that you don't even have to pay for things. And that starts at the zero level. We all have access to things which give us wealth in our life, which don't cost us anything. And finding out and analysing in our lives what we value as wealth and allocating resources towards the things which provide us greater wealth, as in greater access, is living life now. It's all those three things wrapped up into one. And that is what today's show is all about. That is it. Hit the like button. And of course, put your comments in the chat box, because we're here to talk about this. I have my Remarkable pad here, which is hooked up to my screen right now. Hi, everyone. And thanks very much to TradeSpot and the epic man, the legend, the myth, the legend, the man himself that got me this as a present one time. And I very much like it. Here we are here to talk about the 25, 15, 50, 10 rule. Chat, be with you, talk about it. And of course, as well, to take part in our fun goals, and to be here as a community together of investors and traders and people who are interested in finance to talk and chat in the box. As you can see here, the live chat is flying, and thanks to everybody for making that atmosphere so fun. And I love reading the live chat videos when I get the chance after the show, that is. And here we have, of course, the people who are getting us towards our goal. We have made it, and the goal was that we will check out the news headlines. And we're going to do that right now. In fact, we're going to do that right now. Just before we dive into the news headlines, which was the goal, we're going to take a look at what the chat has been saying in these wonderful donations towards the goal that we had. Dashi saying, "Hey Rocky and everybody. Hey Minner, thanks for your one there. You're a better journalist than any news headline. That's cool. Hey Disco Biscuits. Hello all. Great LPSN dip opportunity today." Queenie Janine says, "Thanks for all your hard work, Rocky." Scony Maloney, "It would be great to hear your take on LPSN chart at some point during the show, Rocky. Thanks. Well, we'll see if we can get some time allocated towards that, Scony." Minner says, "Maybe take a look at crypto." Okay, pal, crypto's been moving a lot, and we'll take a look at that in today's show. But we have to set up a new goal for everybody just now, and we also have to as well take a look at the poll results. Take a look at the poll results and discuss that in some more detail. So the goal for the the goal for the next couple of minutes here is that we'll also take a look over at the Discord headlines, right? Because we put some good articles on there, and we maybe want to just have a quick reaction to some of the in the Discord, the news headlines in the Discord, right? So we'll do that if we get that goal achieved for some fun. Let's start the goal, see if that's started. Yeah. And we'll also do this poll here, end the poll. So how many people took part in the poll? What do you reckon? And let me see then. We can also ask another one about whether or not they have actually just changed their opinion about what wealth is. Is wealth access is the poll that I'm going to ask everybody. So we'll see what the results are in just a sec there. And we'll do is wealth access, right? So that's what I've just explained. Is wealth actually access? And you don't need to agree. Like I explained as well, for hundreds of years, people just simply looked at wealth as being how much gold you've got in your pocket. Right? It doesn't need to be about access. It doesn't mean to be that you have wealth because you can go to the doctor who will take away your cataracts if you have them. That might not be your opinion. It might be your opinion as an example of a random thing, which is wealth in the world that people didn't have in the past. Awesome. Fantastic. So we'll check back in. We'll just check with this poll first before we move on. Do you own or lease your car? Own it outright, bought and paid for, 88%. Lease it. It feels like mine, but it isn't. And that second part of there is actually how the billionaires live their life. What maybe I should have done is, with regards to that poll, as said that if we get to the next poll, we'll do a couple of like internet searches or something like that, and react together towards those things. But first off, just let's take a couple of minutes then to check the news headlines, because that was what the request was that came in, and this is one of the things that we can talk about possibly in today's show, possibly, depending on how it all goes. Let me know how you're doing in the chat, by the way. This is the most important thing that you can do right now, is let me know how you are in the chat. I want to see here in the chat, it's people telling me how they're doing. And we're going to take a look at the news headlines. Let's keep that over my screen there so I can see it real time. So we have the FT here. Leading story today is that Wall Street has a sudden rebound which catches investors offside. You're offside. S&P wipes out 2025 losses as stock extends rally. So that's a nice little bit of context with regards to the S&P. The S&P here, which is what we had up on chart. It's almost like I planned that. Isn't it? Do you like this? Do you like it? Do you like it when we have little neat little segments like that in the live shows here when we plan things out and it just fits together so neatly? A yacht I would lease. So we have a couple of answers coming in here. Cool. A yacht I would lease. A car I would just drive. Cars are ubiquitous. So we've also got a comment from Lisa in there. So many breaking news stories in Discord to catch. Yeah, folks, how are you doing? Let me know in the chat box. I have the chat window open right there, so I want to see how you're doing. Don't leave me hanging when I'm asking you how you are. Are you having an awesome time this evening, or this morning, or wherever you are in the world? 2025 losses wiped out in S&P moves. So let's just go back and find where we've had highs on the S&P in 2025 so far. So the highs we had back in March were up there at 5,783. The highs that we had in April were at 5,700 or so. And the highs we had in February were at 6,226. And the highs we have right here are at 5,887. What did we read as that news headline just a second ago? What did it say? S&P 500 wipes out 2025 losses as stocks extend rally. The chart shows in February the prices were higher. I mean, am I missing a huge gap up today? I'm pretty sure. Headlines, eh? Headlines. So that's the headline from the FT, and we've got one more place to check out before we move on, and it's of course the BBC, the British Broadcasting, God Save Her Majesty's British Broadcasting Company Corporation.com. And this is Trump touts the record Boeing-Qatar Airways deal, and I'm sure Boeing will be so happy, won't they? Our old Bosie Wosie, they'll be happy, won't they? Bosie is a Scottish word for kiss, by the way. So if you ever offered a Bosie in Scotland, say yes. Trump touts record Boeing-Qatar Airways deal. I thought this was an interesting one because because Boeing has had a bit of a hard time. It's had a hard time with things recently. However, energy prices dropping maybe puts fuel demand up, which maybe helps airlines. Maybe they fly more, they do more. Maybe everything happens in the plane world really takes off again. And Qatar Airways are helping out with that. They've agreed to buy up to 210 jets from American manufacturing giant Boeing, which is pretty neat because China did, of course, cancel all the debts they got. So the news behind the news, folks, right? The news behind the news. And that's what we can do here on this channel. We can do it. We can do it. You and I, we can do it. What's the news behind the news? What's the news behind the news? Shall we analyze this in the half and half mode with Remarkable just real quick? Let's analyze the news behind the news here and think about this one for a second. So first off, we had China. China, right? This is the Boeing news. Boeing news, right? And first off, we had China cancelling all of the orders. We know that Boeing this is the news behind the news. So we know that Boeing has like 7 year, is it 7 year wait list? We know that China cancelled all of its orders, right? China's a big country. It was a big one, isn't it? There's like a billion people live in China. And they use a lot of planes. So they didn't want them. But we know that this had a 7 year wait list. And we also know that planes are not cheap. Well, I think with these three crucial components, we can see that when in the recent times, Boeing has been left a little bit kind of sad-faced because of the tariffs that Donald Trump put on China, and they cancelled the orders. that someone at Boeing was probably like, Donald, you're going to have to sell our planes to somebody. And Donald was the man, the art of the deal, will have known that the right thing to do to Boeing at that time will have said, we better give me those planes cheap. Better give me those planes cheap. And then he probably went over to Qatar and says to Qatar, do you have any money? I've seen money lying around here, Qatar, and I think you probably want some planes because I heard you've got the best airline company in the world, Qatar Airways. Qatar is it Airways or Airlines? Qatar. You have all heard of them, probably. Maybe not in America, but they're like the best. Shall we just find what Qatar Airways website looks like so you can get an impression of like their sort of how they think about wealth? Let's just go jump over to Qatar. So there's no Q, there's no U in Qatar. Oh, an easy one to forget if you're a native English speaker. Qatar Airways or Lines. Airlines, Qatar Airlines, Qatar Airways. I'll go with airlines. I don't know if it's airlines or airways. I was wrong. You could probably in the audience are sensing he knows it's airways. He knows it's airways. He's typing airlines. This is Qatar. Top 5 destinations to explore this June. Oh, travel like a champion. Go to the FIFA World Cup. Let's stop over in Qatar and let's go to these amazing locations in the world. Oh, the Privilege Club collection. This is our homepage, folks. Privilege Club collection. Let's put this in a context. Let's check out Ryanair's website. Just book it. Members only sales, free seats and travel insurance. Buy now, new. Hey, come on. You can get some cheap car hire. You know, do you need a city break? Visit OzzyJek. That's what that's saying. OSIJEK. Has anybody in the audience heard of where OzzyJek is? Let's go visit OzzyJek. So you get the idea. Like this is a different sort of vibe, right? Different vibe on the. So Trump goes over to Qatar and says to them, do you want to buy any planes? And they're like, man, we have to wait 7 years to buy planes. And he's like, I have a little birdie's told me that there might be a wee couple of slots opening up there on the old waiting list. Do you want to buy some? I'll give you them at a good price. And overall, right, let's see, is Qatar Airways the best in the world? Because I'm sure they claim they are. Let's ask Google. Yes, there you go. It's named. There's always it's the best in the world. There's your answer, right? So he goes over to the best airline in the world, and he comes back with a deal that's worth 96 billion. It sounds brilliant, and it would support the 154,000 jobs, right? Which is good news, and it's going to be the largest ever order of Dreamliners, which is brilliant. Sounds brilliant, because we know that last month we had the largest ever cancellation. The news behind the news. New segment, folks. News behind the news segment. Let me see, let me see. What did you think of the news behind the news segment? Everybody, I need to know what you thought of it. First off, we had, of course, I was asking how you're doing. Kitties was saying he neither leases or owns, just admires from afar. Good idea. 2 of the best things I ever read were in the Discord news section this week already. Wow, what a comment. We'll have to check that out. We'll have to. Even if we don't make it towards this goal, 1 out of 5. Yeah, we'll just have to do it anyway. Hi, everybody. Hi, Go to Win. Access is wealth. Wealth does not guarantee access. 89% of people currently in this poll are agreeing with the theme of today's show, that wealth is access. Nice. Ali B. Ali Bally B. Sitting on your mother's knee, waiting for a wee Bobby to buy some Coulter's candy. That's Ali B. How are you doing there in the audience? Good to see you. Space Hopper, it's good to see you too. Proper cracking me up tonight. Nice, good comment. Nice one to finish that off with. You always hope to have a nice soft landing, don't you? Whenever you're scrolling down here, you want to have a nice soft landing, and you gave it to me there. What a legend! Sticking you back over on this screen over here, folks. When you see me looking over this direction, it's because I'm reading the live chat messages. So be sure to be keeping me entertained with your amazing commentary and so on in the chat box. Let's just see who it was as well, by the way, that took us towards that goal. I think it was Dash EC. You're a legend. We will be taking a look at crypto in today's show as well, as people have requested it, but we want to just dive into, now that we've done the behind the news section, the news behind the news, we are sorry to everybody that lives in the 1990s and has clappers for lights, switches. Sorry. No. Let's get rid of this as well, hey? Or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to take analyze, think about this 20, 20, 25, 15, 50, 10 rule and see exactly where do you want to put your money. Now, I think the thing about this to remember as well, folks, that these are kind of guidelines. Oh, I did my intro to the video wrong. Give me a second. God, that took far too long. That's not normal behavior. So I just want to go back and tell you what the actual kind of intro to that video actually was. I've seen a lot of people talking about this on YouTube videos recently. How the 1%. Yeah, what was I saying? I've seen a lot of people on YouTube talk about this recently, how the 1% manage their money. Well, there's a thing or two to learn about that. And I asked this question a long time ago. I had the privilege of meeting Scotland's first ever billionaire, Sir Tom Farmer. And then I had the privilege of being mentored by the people that launched Scotland's first ever $1 billion IPO company. And I asked both of them how they would manage their wealth. And that is the experience that I want to pass along to you today in this video. That was cool, wasn't it? That's what I should have. That was well, whenever you're ad-libbing and whatever, you kind of forget things. But that was the idea. We want to talk about the 2050 and all that split, and let's just do that for a few minutes. Now, when you consciously use a framework that's like this, deciding specific percentages for essentials, enjoyment, stability, and growth, as with this rule for income, or structuring your investments with a clear sort of 60, 30, 10 split, what you're doing has far more than just a budgeting or investing exercise. What you're actually doing is determining your levels of access, which is why I was trying to frame things in that idea before, where you work out the sort of pie of access that you want, and then you see where you're lacking at certain areas. That's kind of where you can allocate a bit more capital to. I think this is a good starting point in terms of saying there are these key components that we can look at, but for some people they'll be kind of predetermined to a certain extent in terms of what their budget already is, and then the way that they allocate could evolve over time. So you might use these as a sort of a target to move towards initially, so on. So it's not like a hard and fast rule, but there are sort of general principles towards this, and I outlined those kind of at the start. And it's about understanding access, and also you can see with the role models in the world like Elon Musk. I mean, how many houses does he own? And if we do find it enjoyable to take a look at this, we'll dive into that by doing a Google search for how many houses he owns in today's show, if possible. Oh, look at that. We've got Sauce Food Cart supporting the show, chatting about his cheese sandwich. We'll take a look at that in just a sec, pal. We'll drag that onto the screen. But, you know, think about it for seconds in terms of this here kind of rule. You allocate how those funds go, that dictates your immediate access to daily necessities in the here and the now, the experiences, the enjoyment. Simultaneously, you're also allocating a certain amount to growth and stability. So those directly shape your future access as well, as both in terms of like growing and in terms of that safety net underneath you. And providing access to sort of security is a big part of wealth. It features as the number one item on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, after all. And if you are a modern human being, believe me, you need these things. Access to financial independence and opportunities to security down the line also come from this growth aspect, and the power to consciously define and engineer both your present, your future. Access that in essence is wealth. And that leads me to my encouraging point, right, to everybody in the audience, which I already said earlier on, to analyze what you see as wealth, right, and how you can access it. And if you can access some of it for free, or where you need to allocate more capital more effectively to get that right mix of access and therefore maximize their current wealth, the wealth you have right now. In terms of the investment in the growth aspect of things, you are looking at, say, investing 15 or 10% of your money into growth. I think because we're an investment community, we could put growth for sure as the 15% aspect, and the 10% aspect here as being for enjoyment. Because a lot of our enjoyment, of course, comes from the fact that we're mindfully growing and with our investments and so on. But allocating that much to growth is a very, very good idea. And having an access to, of course, your basic needs, your security and so on, that 50% is going to be a big, big, big deal. But it doesn't necessarily have to be 50%. You don't have to then say, oh, I need to go and stop spending money on these other things and get a house with more rooms in it, so I have more access to rooms or something like that. You can be smart about your allocation of things. And putting 25% into a safety net might be a bit much, depending on exactly what you've already got in your safety nets and so on, stuff like that. And the other thing about this, by the way, is that this is actually how like the 1% think. And therefore, it's a good habit to have and to get into right now for everybody here. Because if you are like me, in the chat box looking at you right now, if you're like me, then you want to be in that 1%. You want to be in the 1%. And when you get into that 1%, you want to have the habits and the attitudes and the frameworks and the knowledge that you need to live like the 1%. And how do they live like the 1%? How do the 1% live? They live a life of access, and they have to allocate their capital towards getting that access, which gets them more wealth, which gets them more access. It's because they're the same thing. And this also ties back to the American dream, right? The American dream. Something really interesting happening here in the world, there where you are in America, here where I am in the UK, particularly in places like our neck of the woods. You can see echoes everywhere. You hear it, all this current rhetoric, a lot of onus being put on the American people and the British people to understand complex economic things, tariffs, trade wars, global supply chains. You're going in to buy a TV set, and you're like, why do I need to understand geopolitics, the relationship between Qatar Airlines and its Airways, and how China ditched its order due to tariffs? And why is that relevant to me in my life as the main news headline? This is the average person thinking it. I mean, we're a finance and invest in economic channel here, so we're particularly interested. But your average Joe's going to a TV shop trying to buy a TV, and he needs to understand geopolitical world to be able to do that. That's nuts. That's the world we live in right now, though. It's nuts. It's nuts. It's nuts. It's nuts. So there's there's a bit of a transitory period right now where you're being engaged in the process, but the American dream is all about access, right? It's all about access. It's all about being able to live a life that's smooth, where you've got access to everything, and you don't need to be too concerned about like the why and the how and the what and the therefore of things. If you want to just pursue that American dream and get access to things now during your life. Now, it also isn't a call to abandon. Let's just go and get all max out credit cards and have a massive blowout tomorrow. There is a framework here that says think about tomorrow, invest tomorrow. If you have $100 to spend on ice cream, for ice cream today, okay, that's your access to ice cream is worth $100 today, but you could invest it and have $110 tomorrow. Then you can put towards this, you can put $100 tomorrow, and then you have $10 left over. Now, everybody knows that this $10 here is wealth that you've created by investing the 100 today in order to get 110 to be able to spend tomorrow. So you know that you've got $10 of wealth out of that. But what is that? It's $10 more of access. And that $10 more of access, what does it enable you to do? It enables you to put it into this again and allocate that across different areas. Now, as well, it won't just be $10 right away. There's going to be a degree of tax. And there's going to be a degree of, and tax is fine. When your wealth is going up and your access is going up, then you support tax. You pay it happy. You're happy to pay the tax. It makes you feel good, actually. It's weird. It makes you feel good. And then the government spends that money on social programs and stuff like that. It makes you feel good too. Then you've got this, you've also got inflation, right? And inflation is a topic which we can explore in lots of detail, more detail, all the detail that you could want in more shows. In another show, a show that we do in the near future, we would discuss inflation and the components of it. I think it would be an easy pie to hide a couple of nice vegetables in. Like we could get, an understanding of Keynesian economics so that you go away understanding what it means when people say that phrase. But right now, what we're looking at here in terms of the dynamics about what you spend money on, and how if you were to make this choice here, what you're engaging in is a topic called opportunity cost. Opportunity cost. Opportunity cost. And your lesson, your takeaway for today is that it's an economic word. It's a word from economics. It's a phrase. It has a meaning. It's an official word. We understand what it means already. So it's pretty neat. You've got the understanding there from what we talked about. Let's just work back the way. You have money. You can spend it on certain things. If you allocate some money towards one thing, it stops you being able to allocate money towards another thing. What is that known as? Opportunity cost. The cost of taking one opportunity prevents you from taking another opportunity. It's an economic principle. It's a lesson for you to take away with today, but it also is the constant reminder for us that opportunity is something that you actually generate for yourself through this wealth process involved in your own future from today in the decisions that you make when it comes to allocating your wealth across these different pools. And if you understand then that what the difference between a billionaire who lives the 1% way and you not doing that is that they have looked at their wealth pie, found the areas where they are making the most of opportunities and where the opportunities they're taking are costing them from experiencing other opportunities, and they allocate their wealth in a set way to maximize their access to these opportunities. And that process of engaged, practical, pragmatic understanding of opportunity cost is how the 1% manage their money. And the answer to that question is, how does the 1% manage their money? They answer it by saying they allocate their capital efficiently to maximize opportunity and minimize cost. The opportunity cost is an economic principle. You understand it. We work through it backwards. And the biggest takeaway for everybody, of course, from this here is it's a way to live your life now, which will increase your wealth, because wealth is in it for the living. Just to reiterate, not a sod of the clod, not a clod of the sod that you take. What I'm saying there, by the way, sod is a word people in Scotland and Ireland used for soil. Clod is a lump of soil. So you could then say, not a clod of that sod will make it through the pearly gates, because of course we have a romanticized image as Irish Americans and Scottish Americans have of our home soil, the sod. And of course, when we go to heaven, we want to take it with us. And there's a nice little story, sort of Irish story. You probably have a similar one where you are about a guy that goes, when I die, bury me with the soil from the mountains of Mourne. It was in Ireland where I heard it, in my pockets. And then he gets up to heaven and they don't let him through. So that's my whole reference there. It's a nice little neat one. 1% of the audience will have picked up on it first time. Everybody else understands it now. And that's because you have access to understanding it. So your wealth culturally is gone up. So anyway, not a clod of that sod will make it through those pearly gates. And as Carnegie said, he who dies rich dies disgraced. Wealth is for the living. It's literally the thing by definition. And of course, it's got very little to do with opportunity, with ownership, and everything to do with access. Wealth is access. Access is wealth. And when you understand that, then you can allocate your capital efficiently and win. Eh? Chat. So we had a sauce here. My cheese sandwich factory flooded. Oh, and now smells like wet socks. It's a slow day. Hope yours is going comparatively better. It is better than that. Just hitting the thumbs up on all these because you guys rock. Everybody in the audience rocks, making this place banging, the best weekly finance economic show that exists on planet Earth. The whole planet. Let's do the things that I was going to do. And if you want me to take a look during this show at a request that you have for anything, you better get in touch through the chat box and the links in the description here as well. You really should. Just jumping over here for a second to remind people about some of the content that I've got on my channel, which is really great. What we have over here, what the fuck is money? Fed shock, LPSN deep dive, brilliant, fantastic. I explain what money is. It's amazing. People don't really know what money is. Most people don't know what money is. It's not like criticism of people. It's just that money has evolved an awful lot. So when people talk about what money is, they typically choose a snapshot in time. And typically speaking, it isn't the bleeding edge current what money is right now today. So that video will help you understand what money is right now today and put you in a really cool position to understand all the decisions you make with that money. GDP is basically a lie, which is a video that explains really how not only what happens outside your window when you look to understand GDP, it explains why your local economy is different to the wider economy, how you can get a patchwork economy as a result, why that happens with the intentions from government, the efficient flow of capital. And one of the really cool things about this is it also explains before, and this is probably 3 months, and I'm not being hyperbolic here, before anybody else will explain it, that explains why the US economy shrank by 0.3% and is set to grow because of and if you've watched that video, you know the answer to it, and it is to do with tariffs, right? It's not it's not saying, oh, tariffs made the economy shrink. That's not it. what actually is GDP as a calculation, and I explain exactly how that worked, and you understand at the end of it, you understand everything. What is US national debt and why bonds matter? In that video, you understand, as a result of talking about, of course, national debt and why bonds matter. That's the title of the video. How the interest rates are calculated for the national debt, how the what like the strategies and policies that are used in place about that, and it goes on to explain like things like inflation and everything else. But the big deal there that it really helps you understand is thing for free is things like what quantitative tightening is, what quantitative easing is, all that all thrown in the same way they understood what opportunity cost was there now. Like, you know, here we understand these concepts. Does it have a name? Yes, it does. That's what that is. Bang, you understand something amazing. It's transformative knowledge. And I'll not go on all day. This is the final one that I'll describe here. If you look back, you've got US policy causes huge economic stress. And you can see here in this little clip that I'm dragging a clock onto the screen. If you can just make that out. Might not. Oh, there we go. Just dragging a clock onto the screen. I have this US economic, or not US, this chat about US policy causing huge stress. That was the content at the time. But there was a new economic model which helps you understand everything when you put about the way the world works and the cycles that we go through. In fact, just another note on that real quick here while we're here. As I was thinking about this, like, again, as I do an awful lot, right? An awful lot. And you've got this kind of model which involves a circle, and as you go round the circle, then you have different economic conditions, policies, frameworks. The landscape of your economics and the production values all change all around this in a way that where one process leads on to the next. And there's a second clock as well, which has the same thing on same principle, where it's to do with the ideology in the country. So when you separate methods of production and the ideology that controls and maps those methods of production, and you understand that they're two separate things, but both of them, instead of being a linear spectrum which operates as traditionally economics and politics has said, that it kind of works along an idea of left to right as really the basic principles. And you've got like pinkos, and then you've got what we're going to call these here, capitalists. And that's another left to right thing. But when you understand actually that it works on this circle and that it's an evolutionary process and it flips back the way around, kind of makes you kind of think about what it is if humans were actually fully self-actualized, right? And if AI took over everything, right? Uber alles. If AI goes totally Uber alles, right? Then what would our lives look like with every single little thing, like machines, robots taking care of everything? What are you doing with your day to day whenever you are thinking day to day? What is your job? You leave the house with your briefcase in the morning, and what job are you going to? Whenever the robots have taken care of absolutely everything. And what I'm talking about here is like Ian Banks, culture, for all the sort of sci-fi type people out there, you know, where everything's taken care of, maximum, there's the end, post-scarcity they call it, after a world where everything's taken care of. So you get the wee robot dog thing that goes down to the wee mine that digs up the rare earth, that brings it to the automated factory, that turns that into an iPhone, that delivers it to you with a drone through the mail to your house, and there's your iPhone, and no humans were involved in the process. And the same thing applies to pizza and everything else, right? In that world, what's your job going to be? And it kind of actually, the easiest, you know, when you think, oh god, it's hard to understand, what would it be? Just think here, right? The answer is simple. It's 12. You're back to 12 o'clock, aren't you? And the answer is that what you've become here is if I just can get this symbolically right, is that dude. Everybody knows what that is. That's a farmer. As a farmer, what's basically happened is when everything's properly taken care of and humans are fully self-actualized and everything is completely fixed, the most likely job that most people have, and this isn't when the robots are doing your medicine and everything for you, like what are you going to do as a self-actualized human being, like on a day-to-day basis, what are you going to do? And I think a lot of the human beings in the audience listening to this right now, immediately on a human level, immediately would have thought, yeah, you'd get your hands in the soil, you'd grow some plants, everything's staying, you've got money, no problem, everything. Now, of course, some geeks will be like, you want to be like Captain Picard, because in Star Trek they used no money and it was basically the same system, but you went off and discovered new life, and okay, cool, nerd, cool, I get it, but he's a nerd too. But you'd want to be in there farming, and this is the answer to the economic thing. So this happened. All this stuff is like super interesting. It's brand new. You know, it's new content, new material for the world. So I think it's like super valuable. Really, pretty sure it helps people when it comes to understanding how they should allocate their money and make money as well. So it's like pragmatic, but also it's new, it's fresh, and it helps you understand the way the world works and what it all means, and the news and everything. This is S&P 500. We did ask, I did say I'd break this down a little bit. We talked about this in the past. We know that the headline's a bit kind of confused. I don't know, I'd have to read down the article itself to figure out what they really mean when they say it wipes out its 25 losses, if it doesn't look like that on the chart, but I haven't read the article. But of course, this is a nice, really great, nice push up the way, so well done to the US S&P index, and we had this all mapped out in the past. So if you read that line there, it says that's where the world becomes sane again. It's when you've moved back above correction territory. It was in a bear market for quite some time. We had, of course, a gap left on there, and it's operated as a breakaway gap, given a nice momentum move run towards the top side. It's fantastic. The de minimis kind of came and went without too much damage, because of course it was immediately followed up with negotiations with China, which hadn't happened before, and then another extension into change. So we have this vertical line on the chart still, which is to do with the end of the 90-day extension from before, 90 days before July, whenever that was, when that one was announced. And we could put more vertical lines on here to say, oh, this is when this ends and this is when this ends. But I think when the main point about this, which was quite clear about before, is that the world's become sane again. When we're up here, you're going to look at the backdrop and think the world's becoming sane again. And while it may or may not be like classic simple sanity that people like maybe want more of, is simple enough. This here is simple enough. It's a very sane thing. It isn't that they're selling the planes to China like they were before, but they're selling to somebody else. It's a form of sanity and a return to a normal. But this, of course, is the normal from now on. We're asked to take a look at but before we move off here, from a technical perspective, if this flags out and forms a bull flag, that's very good. Taking a measured move, perhaps from the area of that gap, to say where it could go to next, is fairly reasonable when you consider the resistance area that's up there towards the top end. 6,000 is a resistance point and the target from that pattern technical analysis, classical chart pattern type idea. Now, if you did actually want to include the sort of the full move up here to look at where it could go, you would be going back up towards the all-time highs area, but the real kind of area of higher risk for potential reversal during that period of time would be perhaps between 6,000 and or 6,040 and up towards around about 6,100. And then of course, that's when you're right at the all-time high, but this is the technical looking at the significance of where that liquidity will be being offered to the markets. But this, of course, has a presumption that it doesn't do a few things, and the few things that it does would represent buy the dips if the positivity continues out there. So we'll be looking to see if we get a couple of buy the dip opportunities, and we can use the analysis we've had on the charts here, as we do, because we've had this on the charts here for weeks and weeks at this point. We can look back and already know the answer to all of this. A move back down towards 7,100 would, of course, be filling in the gap, which we'd identified in advance. It's just, we just do things right here, ladies and gents. The main sort of support focus has to be considered to be around about 5,600 if it needs to dip back down towards there, and there'd be great buying the dip opportunities. But I would be cautious and hesitant because I'd be keeping an eye out for how the world can turn on a dime right now. Nevertheless, I'm going to continue with the positivity while it's in place, taking out the high of 5,910 or something like that. Might drag me into a momentum trade targeting up towards 6,000. That'd be 5,090 to 600, or 590 to 600 on SPY if you're looking there. I'm not talking massive moves, but if you're trading on something like ES over here, then of course that sort of thing could end up being the trade that makes your month, your week, your year. So you don't need a lot of pips in order to get good success, and that's very good to be back up towards all-time highs, within a couple of percent of all-time highs in the S&P. That would be big news, big news, like a big return to sanity. Are we ready for that yet? I'm not entirely sure that we are. Big companies, of course, getting involved in these drives, as we know. This is Apple, and a cautionary note to folks here with regards to the overall S&P 500 picture. There's your resistance on Apple. Apple, of course, making up like 150 billion% of what the S&P 500 is. That's an exaggeration, but Apple is a huge weight inside that index. And when it's doing something like this, like, I mean, the chances of it coming back down here and have a pullback, right, are real. If you were to see the price of Apple up here, knowing the weighting it has in the S&P 500, and you were looking and thinking, look, this is breaking out, and the S&P for some reason had, you know, been lagged behind that, then great, fantastic. What we see right here is the S&P is kind of pushed past prior lower highs. Apple hasn't. There's your hesitancy. There's your correlation across a couple of different markets. There's TA elevated a little bit and some takeaway value. The last thing that we're looking at here, as has been requested on today's show, is Bitcoin. Yes, the Discord people. Yeah, the likes of Minner. He probably wanted me to take a look at Bitcoin in part, or crypto, so that he could pull. I mean, I wonder, when you said this here, if what you were thinking is that I would mention then the thing that has to be mentioned. I've been looking forward to telling people about this, of course, as I do, because I love doing this, as I've loved for how long. Let's go back and look and find out how long I've been doing this for on this particular set of technical analysis, and how many times I've had the opportunity to do it. Round about here, so this is cool. So on this particular, these lines in the background, just on these lines alone, I've been doing this since about February, March, April 2023. So that's 2 years, right? 2 years. This thing here has worked so well. So whenever then I'm looking at the, yeah, it's just that good. I know, right? Wouldn't it be cool to learn how to do technical analysis? Wouldn't it be cool? So yeah, look at that support on that line. Wow, the way it got resistance up there. Wow, the inflection that happened around about the area that we'd pointed out where the resistance would be at. Wow, the fact I had to push on it higher up to fulfill like the destiny of the volatility bands, like, doesn't leave me surprised any longer. I've had 2 years of being like that type of surprised, so I'm not surprised anymore. This kind of heartbeat pattern, does it suggest that perhaps, by which I mean you're coming into this area, this is another unique rocky outcrop-ism. You're coming to this area, there's been a huge move up and down, it's resolved back, and it's moved out in that way, just like when you're looking at a heartbeat monitor. Okay, cool, right? Isn't it very visual, easy to understand? And it's basically a chart pattern. What does it mean though? Is it directional, or is it kind of a little bit ambiguous? It is. It's more ambivalent about direction in terms of the pattern itself. It is, of course, showing us that there has been a bit of an exchange of money here. A bit of the old open interest has swapped hands. There's been a big shake in the market, but we're still at the same rough area as you would expect on the a heartbeat type pattern, and that just means that this area here has been repositioning. It's clear on the charts, we can see the big accounts have been repositioning. That's what that means, which of course would mean that perhaps they're looking at the next area up and they've got a question mark about it, and they're saying, what is the significance of the next area if we were to go to it, say up here? And what you'd have is, of course, 115k, which would be, of course, an all-time high. And the question then, of course, would be, if it got to this point here and it did either of them along the way, would you see a rebalancing of the open interest? Yeah, you would, especially as well, of course, if we were to pull back down here to retest some of these areas, having come up very, very high, and then to retest some of these areas would be natural. It would be natural if it were to do it. So that was facilitated that change around at an area. It's often why you get volatility at these lines. Cool insight. It's often why that happens. But you know, at the same time, the market is buoyant. It remains buoyant for good reason. There's plenty of positivity in the background, and we can see that there's been like a good change in the altcoin space as well. Here's the downward trend line. Yes, been doing this one for a long time too. It goes back to December of 2024, so it's been very useful for this period. And what's it done in the meantime? Right, it's come down towards what really would have been an extension of the overall larger trend, and then made it back up to where this one here, right? Check this out. Zooming out, and then we look back and we go, oh, wait a minute, that's the other one. Yeah, that's the other one. So this one takes us back as far as, of course, around about April, May, whatever, 2023. It's been working very well, and it's just come back up to that area, which is cool because it does give us the kind of the general idea, although emotionally this is how we feel. It gives us the general idea that we could be back into the positive trend again. So either way, looking at retraces back at the minute, it's sort of buy the dip opportunity, buy the dip mode, being positive, being bullish. It's up towards all-time highs though. I have to be aware of the fact that overall, if this comes in and finds resistance, then sure, it could be a problem. It could be the end of the road. It could be the end of the bullishness and everybody goes bearish. Could be. But because we're here talking about this right now, let's actually just analyze. This is William O'Neill talked about it at first. If you're watching this in the audience live, you can say who William O'Neill was. If you're watching this as a recording later, put a comment down below as I'm saying this and tell me at what point during it you noticed what I was talking about, and then we'll name it. And that's, of course, a cup with handle as a pattern. So perhaps we could see something, let's just be generous to begin with, because why not? Breaking out like this, taking us up towards 1.3 trillion for the others and all the rest of it. So it could be a positive thing to be back into this here. It could be a positive thing. Be back in these green lines, but we don't know. We might not be. We might not be out of the woods yet. We might not be out of the woods quite yet. Risk is high because prices are at relatively high. It's a cheap time to short. There's a plenty of stop losses stacking up in areas that could make it. So that return to bearishness is fueled by the risk management of the other side of the trade. There could be that the shorts kick in, push the price a little bit down, the longs capitulate. That means that they have to close their positions, which though they become short positions as well, effectively selling, adding fuel to the fire. Could that happen? And therefore we'll try and take a minute just to remember that if prices do drop back down the way, we could be looking for a retrace down towards, as a simple starting point, something like 97 grand, and that would have a similar effect to the other cryptos. However, things are buoyant, things are positive, and the trend has been up, and in the short-term time frames it's still up. Risk management's easy. Long sides are getting the more open interest now, even though it's a high risk opportunity. So that's why they have to put the stop loss management in there, which is why it would have more volatility if it did drop down. Do you hear what I'm saying? I've explained it 3 times in a row, and that's the sort of value they get on the show with me, because I'm Rocky Outcrop, your weekly professional spirit guide that'll guide you through your way towards economic success, financial independence, and all the good stuff that comes along with it. Hit that subscribe button, check out this video if you want to see more of my content, because it's pretty darn good, and I'll see you when I'm back, which is next week, so hit that bell.